Video games. Video games as an industry has been going strong since the 90s, gaining more popularity over the years and taking a dominant spot within the world of entertainment, and having an overall influence on the culture surrounding us. Video games went from looking like a bunch of pixels to having lifelike graphics in the span of 25 years. And with such advancements comes an aspect that's largely under-discussed, and that's the money. And I don't mean the monetization. Video game monetization has been discussed to death, especially in the last couple of years. The aspect that I often feel is forgotten is not the money the industry makes, rather the money the industry needs. Video games are expensive, and I mean really expensive. The advancement in games technology has been rapid and wasted the money needed to make said games. Just to give an idea, Grand Theft Auto 5 costed about $256 million to make in 2013, which at the time seemed like an exception, not the rule. Now, the average AAA game costs tens to hundreds of millions of dollars to develop. That brings up a question: where does that money usually come from? There are many forms of funding. Indie games are most likely to self-fund, while AAA games are pretty much almost always backed by a big publisher. But there is also a third option. If your financial status doesn't allow you to fund yourself, or you simply don't trust soulless corporations with your art. And that method is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a relatively old method that has gained popularity in the last 10 plus years. Through sites like Indiegogo and Kickstarter, people can pitch projects of all sorts, and people can back said projects if they feel they are worth their money and time. Many games have been funded through this method, some of them being massive successes. But on the other hand, this method also produced plenty of disasters. And that doesn't just go for gaming. Tech, gadgets, and self-care products all produced some awe-inspiring failures. The risks of crowdfunding fall mainly on the backers, as there is a non-0% chance of the game you are backing either coming out at best half-baked, at worst not coming out at all. There has been many such cases where a game gets funded only for said game to turn out to be a scam, or after many delays come out in an unexcusable state. And I want to look at some of these disasters that I find particularly interesting. In December 11th of 2025, Capcom announced Mega Man Override, ending a 7-year-long drought and giving Mega Man fans their first win in years. But it wasn't always like that. There was a much darker time, a time without a new Mega Man game in sight for years to come. And that was 2010. Keiji Inafune would leave Capcom after 23 years with the company, his departure resulting in the cancellation of multiple Mega Man projects, effectively setting the franchise into a hiatus as no one wanted to take his spot. Years passed without any new games or announcements, and things looked bleak to say the least. But in 2013, returning like an absentee father after their kid gets an NFL contract, Keiji Inafune would announce a new game, Mighty No. 9. The reception was overwhelmingly positive. People were hyped, as it has been years since the last proper non-handheld Mega Man game. And this was not made by just anybody. This was Mega Man's daddy making it, and Inafune had a great track record, so people really had no reason to distrust him. The Kickstarter page for the game would launch on August 31st, asking for $900,000, which may seem a little steep. Well, steep or not, that didn't matter, as in 2 days the campaign would meet its goal, and not too long after would get $4 million, which is over 400% of the campaign's initial goal, making it the biggest gaming-related crowdfunding campaign at the time, as well as allowing it to hit all of its stretch goals, which included additional versions of the game and 2 additional mystery stretch goals. And speaking of money, looking at some of the tiers, you got your starter tier, which doesn't give you anything. You got the basic tier for $20, which gives you additional copy of the game. You got bigger tiers, which can net you some merch, as well as the previous rewards. A $500 tier where you can design a challenge in the game. Actually, I wonder what's the last tier? 10,000? Well, at least you do get a dinner date with Inafune, as well as the previous rewards. 4 people actually took that offer. That aside, the game was set for release in April of 2015, and in the meantime, a lot of things got announced. In 2014, Inafune made his ambitions clear that he wanted Mighty No. 9 to be more than just a game, but a multimedia empire. He wanted stuff like a live-action film, a TV drama, anime, manga, comic books, and seemingly much more. The much more included an announcement in July of 2014 for another crowdfunding campaign, asking for $200,000 for a full English voice cast. And it didn't stop at that. On October 30th of the same year, Inafune was asking for another $200,000 for DLC levels. People were starting to get frustrated as it seemed Inafune was milking them for all their worth, but people didn't give it too much thought. That was till shortly after Inafune announced another Kickstarter campaign for Red Ash the Indelible Legend, which is supposed to be a spiritual successor for Mega Man Legends. You remember those Mega Man projects that got cancelled when Inafune left? Well, one of them was Mega Man Legends 3, which was a much anticipated sequel, so Inafune said, why not make a spiritual successor for that too? Well, there were a lot of problems with that. The story around the Red Ash Kickstarter is actually pretty complicated and can be its own subject, but in summary, the campaign was horribly mismanaged. To give an idea, the trailer for the Kickstarter is like 9 minutes long and does not show a single second of gameplay, and the stretch goals spreadsheet is more complicated than the Mega Man timeline. All of that, mixed with skepticism and overall distrust towards Inafune and the project itself, caused the campaign to not reach its goal. Hell, it didn't even come close. And this wasn't the only campaign that Inafune launched, as a campaign for Red Ash Magi Cicada was made, which was an animated adaptation of Red Ash, a game that has yet to come out. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
what could possibly go wrong?
Funnily enough, it did get fully funded. But don't worry too much about Red Ash the Indelible Legend, as the Chinese company Fuse swooped in to fund it. Funnily enough, this campaign also had a tier to have dinner with both Inafune and the Red Ash team. I don't know what it is with this man and inviting fans over for dinner. Well, I wouldn't call it inviting with that price tag, but nobody took the offer this time. Also, I would like to go on a little tangent about some of the fuck-ass shit that Inafune was saying. For example, he said that Mighty No. 9 is his child, while Mega Man is his foster child. Imagine your father loving his new child so much you get demoted from biological to foster. I know the actual quote makes a little more sense, but you need to take into account the fact that Inafune is the one who walked away. He's the one who by his own decision left Capcom to save the Japanese game industry or whatever. Like, how does that happen? And not only that, he also said that Mighty No. 9 beats Mega Man. Mind you, this is a Mega Man who is 10 games deep and has beaten like 80 Robot Masters if not more, and has feats for days. But Mighty No. 9, who got no feats, no accolades, no nothing, somehow beats him? I seriously doubt that. Also, little fun fact, Hideki Kamiya was foaming at the mouth over Mighty No. 9, raging and blocking people over it, while insulting Inafune, which is just the usual Tuesday for Kamiya. I'm not kidding, bro is probably the most terminally online game developer out there. The release date for Mighty No. 9 closes in, and the 28th of April comes, and the game is delayed, which is to be expected when it comes to Kickstarter projects. People were frustrated by it, but hey, it happens. They also announced a partnership with Deep Silver as a publisher. Now, the game was set to release in September of 2015. Come August, and the game is delayed. Again. And this time it's delayed all the way to the first quarter of 2016. People were starting to get concerned. That concern wasn't helped by the fact the demo they released as an apology for the delays fucking sucked. A demo they delayed, by the way. Like, how do you delay a demo? How does that happen? All of this combined would result in eyebrows being raised. People were starting to question Inafune's and Concept's management of not just Mighty No. 9, but literally all their projects. They were making more promises before fulfilling any of their previous ones. At best, all seemed messy, at worst, all seemed grossly neglectful. But fret not, Concept promised this time there will be no more delays and that the game is going to come out on February 9th of 2016. Half a month before release, it was delayed to spring. Like, I'm at a loss for words. How do you fuck up that bad? Well, remember that multiplayer battle mode I mentioned? Turns out it was the reason for all of that, as the developers, Indie Creates, had zero experience with multiplayer modes or games, in turn resulting in massive complications, which in turn delayed the game constantly. Yeah, by this point, people were at a loss, but it was too late to get back the money, so all the backers could do is wait patiently and hope that the game is at least somewhat good. In May of 2016, about a month before release, Deep Silver would release a trailer for the game, in hope of getting people hyped up again. That trailer was called Mighty No. 9 Masterclass.
Hey, you, looking at the screen, let me ask you a question. Do you like awesome things that are awesome? Then you gotta play this game, dude. It's friggin' cool and crazy addictive, like popping bubble wrap addictive. Check this out. See, that's your dash move. There's a short dash, a long dash, jump dash, spiral, slide. There's probably a dash that makes you breakfast. I don't know.
Great idea. Wait, what?
Point is, you're dashing around like a friggin' moon man, and I love it. Oh, and look at this. There's all these combo moves you can do. Then you can do combos on combos to rack up your score. And I know you like that combo on combo action.
Yeah, that's a trailer, alright. I wonder how people feel about it. Oh no, that's not good. That is not good at all. Yeah, no one liked this trailer. Not the fans, not the backers. It was, and it still is, one of the worst trailers in all of gaming history. What hurts us the most was the narrator. Watching this felt like watching one of those stand-up sessions and the guy just fumbles all of his jokes.
Friggin' cool and crazy addictive, like popping bubble wrap addictive.
He spends more time yapping the audience's ear off and making corny jokes than actually explaining the game and its mechanics. And the gameplay they showcased, honestly, did not look all that enticing. I also like to highlight the most infamous line of this whole trailer.
And make the bad guys cry like an anime fan on prom night.
Besides the fact this is as funny as an abortion, may I remind you that they were making an anime for this game. On top of that, most Mega Man fans are anime fans. I mean, Mega Man X4 had anime cutscenes. Like, who was this joke for?
Ah! No, this isn't happening. There's no reason for me to go on. What? What am I fighting for?
To further hammer in the point, the CEO of Inti Creates, the people who were developing the game, posted this on Twitter, lambasting the trailer for being, in his word, crappy. Mind you, all of this happened a month before release. A month before release, Deep Silver whipped up one of the worst trailers of all time, further tanking any of the goodwill this game still had. Finally, the day of release comes, and the reviews start dropping. The game didn't live up to the hype. It wasn't awful either, it was worse. It was mid as fuck. People were expecting it, but it still hit hard for those who backed the game. Funnily enough, there really isn't much else to say about Mighty No. 9. It was mid, and it didn't live up to the hype. Also, physical rewards didn't ship when promised, as Fangame LLC was waiting for Concept to provide funding. What I can talk about is some of the promises made by Concept, which they didn't fulfill. Starting with Red Ash, the indelible legend. Fuse, the company which was supposed to fund Red Ash, seemingly shut down and was absorbed into its parent company, in turn cancelling Red Ash. But what's funny is that Red Ash Magi Cicada, which is the animated adaptation, did come out, and for the full story on that, go watch Red Hedge's excellent video on it. The 3DS and Vita versions of the game, which were long anticipated, remained in limbo for years till people effectively gave up on them. Also, the pre-orders were finally cancelled in 2025. The thing that is common between all things previously mentioned was the lack of communication by Concept. People had to figure out most of the stuff on their own, as Concept seemingly couldn't tell people themselves. All the multimedia projects planned for Mighty No. 9 were cancelled as well. A year later, in 2017, Concept was bought by Level 5, and Keiji Inafune left the company in 2024. And just last month, Concept, the studio started by Inafune himself, was shut down. Now, this leaves us with one question. What the hell happened to Inafune? Well, all this caused people to look back at his career with scrutiny, and people came to a realization. Bro was a hack. Inafune leveraged his producer status to take credit from other people who did the actual work. Which reminds me of a certain someone. And if this man wasn't shameless enough, he launched an NFT collection in 2022. What is the conclusion to draw from all of this? Hideki Kamiya did nothing wrong. Moving on from Inafune's mighty blunder, how about a visual novel, in specific a dating sim? While holding some similarities to visual novels, dating sims separate themselves with their focus on romance. While it is a niche genre, it still holds a relatively dedicated community. Cause sometimes people want to unwind from the stresses of the real world and talk to some fictional men, women, pigeons. So unsurprisingly, there has been plenty of Kickstarters for dating sims. And one that caught my attention was Kickstarted in the Butt, a Chuck Tingle digital adventure. First and foremost, who the hell is Chuck Tingle? Besides having the most porn story name ever, Chuck Tingle is a relatively famous gay erotica writer who is, and I quote, a bisexual taekwondo master, which is a weird way to say black belt in jiu-jitsu. Chuck's work isn't your usual straightforward gay erotica. No, his stuff is quite unique and abstract, with a lot of fantastical elements, all contained in a universe called the Tangleverse, which would seemingly lend itself well to a visual novel. In fact, let me read some of his titles. My Billionaire Triceratops Craves Gay Ass, taken by the Gay Unicorn Biker. I'm Gay for My Living Billionaire Jet Plane, glazed by the Gay Living Donuts. Bigfoot Sommelier Butt Tasting. Space Raptor Butt Invasion. Poke Butt. Go. Bounded by them all. Slammed in the butthole by my concept of linear time. Some abstract stuff to say the least. All of this piqued the interest of Zoe Quinn. Yes, that's Zoe Quinn. The Gamergate Zoe Quinn. I actually came to know about this game from looking at their Wikipedia page as part of my research for a video I was making on Phil Fish, which is cancelled. For those who are not aware, which could be a good chunk of you, as all this happened over 10 years ago, Gamergate was an online shitstorm where gamers and game journalists flung shit at each other over integrity in gaming journalism and feminism. In the end of it all, nothing was achieved and the only winners were the grifters who made bank from it. And to be frank, it is impossible to give a somewhat decent summary of this event without making this video at least 2 hours long. You can do your own research, as I personally don't want to delve too much into it. But enough about Gamergate, it's time to tingle. That sounded much better in my head. Quinn's first interaction with Chuck was on Twitter, explaining to him what are video games, as apparently the guy lives in a goon cave to write his works and has never played a video game in his life.
And I tweeted at him, I'm like, oh, doctor, because since he says he's a doctor of Taekwondo, I'm like, doctor, make a game with me. And he's like, yes, what is game? And I'm like, it's like art, but bad. And he's like, okay, and he sends me all of these weird fucking notes. He did drawings, he got super into it, and I'm like, cool, let's make a game out of this.
Chuck eventually comes to like the idea and gives them the go-ahead. Not long after, the Kickstarter comes to be in October of 2016. Though he launches the page for Kickstarter in the butt at Chuck Tingle Digital Adventure, which was going to be an FMV adventure dating sim, based within the world of Chuck's work. Even apparently the game was going to be free on release without a specific price tag. It just needed to hit its goal of $69,420.
Nice.
It was 2016, alright. And honestly, it makes sense that their idea for the game was a visual novel, as Quinn's accolades fall more so into writing than traditional game development. Whether the writing is good or not is up for you to decide. The campaign page details tiers like Spaghetti Sweeties, which starts at $5, all the way to Billionaire Jet Plane, which is priced at $1,069.
Nice. Yeah, nice.
Where you can be in the game as a unicorn butt cop and even a protagonist in one of Chuck Tingle's books, would be named after you. Honestly, the campaign does a relatively good job explaining the structure and plans for the game, while also being in theme for Chuck's work. There's a 3-minute trailer which is mostly a guy in a wife beater wearing a unicorn head gyrating, while text shows on screen, and a 10-minute Vice interview which includes insight into the game itself and the development process. Zoe in the interview talks about their inspirations and struggles, and there's also a mention of how Gamergate hindered development. The game would break its funding goal, getting over $85,000, and the development would start officially in November. Updates about the game's development would come out regularly, once or twice a month. They even got the doctor himself to see the game's development in February of 2017.
We are rolling, so whenever you're ready.
Hi, Beckaroos. Guess who's here?
Things were going well for some time, till January 1st of 2018, which was a Happy New Year's post and not an update, which is fine, as people expected an update soon after. But nothing happened. Months passed and no new updates. Mind you, the backers were used to having 1 or 2 updates per month, and it has been more than 6 months. Mind you, the game was supposed to come out in early 2017, so people were concerned, eventually taking to Twitter to ask some questions. And the person first approached about the deafening silence was the doctor himself, which produced some interesting responses. What I said is, I'm not making a video game. I've never been making a video game. I do not know where this money is because I'm not involved in any way and never have been. I hope this is clear and answers your questions. Chuck not being involved is certainly quite odd. I mean, the guy's a writer. I expect him, write something for the dating sim visual novel based on his world. What's even weirder than that, in the FAQ section of the Kickstarter page, Chuck was said to be actually involved. When people questioned Chuck about this, he answered, "Thank you, This is just saying what I have told you. She asked permission to make game, I said yes, and then sent some message of here's how Tingleverse works, because it is very complicated place. Then I said have fun, go make game. Any more questions? People were not satisfied by this response, and that isn't what I would call being involved in the game's development. Chuck ends up responding to someone who is claiming that he scammed people. Thank you. As said before, I did not make Kickstarts or video game. I do not make big money until game is finished, as part of deal to adapt this way. I have said many times, but these things do not matter to you because you have agenda to tell story the way you want. Was a tweet claiming that he doesn't make any money till the game is out. This answer left people with even more questions, like where did the money go and what is going on? Well, eventually, Zoe answered after many inquiries. TLDR, still working on it, just slower because I ran out of money a long time ago and had to get day jobs. Also, I've been working on ways to bring on some assistance with finishing it. Also, don't yell at Chuck about it, shipping the game is on me. This somewhat calmed people. So, did the game come out? Zoe Quinn has left us for dead. I hope you're still making the game. It's 2022, time for an update. The hardest part I can't wrap around my head is that she is active on social media, but ignores all her backers on this project. An explanation and an apology would suffice. Yeah, the game didn't come out. Not only that, Zoe has been completely silent about the game since. They don't talk about it or even mention it. No updates, nothing. The backers were obviously very angry, asking where the hell is the game and their money. A lot of people were screwed over, but I want to highlight one person in particular, and that's Zach Kaplan. He's been engaging with this project for nearly 10 years, and honestly I feel really bad for them, as they were clearly excited for this project and the trust was completely betrayed. Also, there was a tweet I didn't mention for dramatic effect, but someone who was working on the game was asked about it and they responding saying that. They also asked if this is a job offer.
Hey, hold on, this shit ain't funny. It ain't funny, but it is.
Ouch. Yeah, this puts things into a different perspective. I mean, not only was the money gone, but seemingly people who worked on this project weren't even paid much if at all. And considering the silence of Zoe and the anger of the backers, it's very clear that, well, this ended up being a scam. I was originally planning to avoid talking about Quinn's past and Gamergate as a whole, because it's a musty, dusty, hazardous can of worms. But whether you glaze Quinn like they are a freshly baked donut, or have enough hate for them in your heart to overflow the Caspian Sea 3 times over, you should feel the same way about this, which is reasonable anger. They took $85,000 from over 2,000 people, some of them paying up to 1,000, and proceeded to deliver nothing, nil, not, zilch, to their backers, as well as ghost them for years. And seemingly they didn't even pay their employees well. I don't believe Zoe did this Kickstarter as an elaborate way to scam their fans, and fans of Tingle's work. I believe they had good intentions, but seemingly things spiraled out of control, and they lost all the money. That still does not excuse it. And don't let me start with Chuck. The poor dude thought he was approaching a new medium to tell his stories, to only have his name dragged through the mud. In a Reddit AMA from 5 years ago, Chuck said this in response to a question about Kickstarter in the butt. I would say disappointed that it did not come out, because what I saw of it looked really dang neat, and also looked almost done, but also there's nothing I can do about it. I don't know how to make games. As man name of Chuck, I do not like ways of Kickstarter. Personally, I think it is better for creators to raise money themselves. If you're a creator that has Kickstarter that is okay, I understand this way for some, it is just not for me. So, I think it is listening in future of saying no if someone came to Chuck and wanted to do a project based on Tinglers. I would only say they could use Tingleverse if they had all the funding already, I think. I think this is particularly heartbreaking, as Chuck seems like such a nice guy. He seems like someone who's passionate and sincere, who also cares a lot about his works and his fans. But Zoe's actions eroded his trust. The reason I'm emphasizing all of this is because in my research I found people doing the biggest leaps of logic. I'm talking golden medal levels of mental gymnastics to defend this specific incident. I want to make myself as clear as I possibly can. I was like 10 when GG happened, and I do believe Quinn was harassed in the midst of all of it, and received an innumerable amount of threats and verbal abuse. But that doesn't excuse what they did. The people who backed them were their fans, people who cared for them and trusted them, and they betrayed the trust. The least they could have done was say sorry and confirm the project's cancellation, and even that was too much. I think what adds to all of this is the fact this is not the first time Zoe done something like this. A while before Kickstarter, but Zoe tried to do a game jam called the Ripple Game Jam, which they collected donations for, but obviously it has been over a decade and the game jam never happened. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice.
Fuck you.
Moving on from this minefield to how about something much more straightforward? What about a strategy game? In specific, a god game. God games are a subgenre of strategy games where you play as a deity who manages a population in hopes of said population worshipping you. It was, and it still is, an incredibly niche genre. So of course, people were eager to get more, and who was better to make one than the man who originated the whole thing himself? The legendary game designer, Peter Molyneux. Molyneux would go to Kickstarter in hopes of getting funding for his new game, Godus. The title's a little on the nose. Molyneux, along with his new studio 22 Cans, would ask for nearly £500,000. The game would reach its goal on the 20th of December, hitting £526,000, which allowed the game to reach some of its stretch goals, like additional modes, making your own sect, James Leach writing the story, multiplayer co-op, and position modes. And last but not least, a Linux version. But not the Ouya version. I know someone was heartbroken by that. And thus the game's development started. A year later, in 2013, the game would release on Steam to overwhelmingly positive reviews, and Molyneux being hailed as the legend within gaming. It's what would have happened if we lived in an ideal world. But we don't. While it was true that Molyneux was a revolutionary genius who invented the whole genre and had a big hand in the creation of one of the most underrated RPG franchises, he had a big, fat problem. Molyneux lies. And Molyneux isn't your typical liar. If anything, I would consider him the most deceptive, dishonest liar in the gaming industry as a whole. And I mean the most. This man is so dishonest and deceptive, he makes Todd 60 times a detailed Howard look like a devout Christian in a confessional booth. He is so dishonest that everything that comes out of his mouth needs to be taken with a ton of salt. He can tell you the sky is blue, and that statement would need to be peer-reviewed by a council of scientists to determine its validity. He is so dishonest, in fact, he spent years glazing and spit-shining the Kinect as the most revolutionary piece of technology, only to come years later and shit on it after it died.
You know, Kinect, I'll be honest, it was a disaster. It was a disaster, Ryan.
Another thing he loved to do was embellish things, so much that they were straight up impossible. A good example was him talking about Project Milo, which was him basically promising a modern-day character.ai-esque levels of interactivity with some random British child all the way back in 2009.
Science fiction writers, filmmakers, they haven't imagined what we're able to do today. Yeah? She's going to introduce you to Milo.
Hiya, Milo. How you doing?
Hi, Claire. You okay?
Actually, I'm a bit nervous.
You? Nervous? I don't believe it.
This is the first time that thousands of people are going to see this.
Thousands of people?
Here we're seeing Claire being recognised, and the emotion in Claire's voice being recognised, and that emotion reflecting in Milo's face. Those are all being seen for the first time.
So listen, I was thinking today you should let me beat you at football again. That is if you finished your homework. You have finished your school project.
What happened there is that Claire knew Milo so well, she knew when he was worried about something. His head was down, he wasn't looking at the camera so much, and this is about you meeting a character, a person.
Besides the fact this sounds like something Jimmy Savile would enjoy, people still used phones with numpads back then. This sort of technology was not anywhere near attainable. It was such an issue, in fact, Microsoft hired a team of handlers to stalk him in public conventions so he doesn't yap too much and cause them problems. Like promise how Project Milo would bring back your dead child. His reputation was black and blue before he even started his campaign for Godus, and that nearly resulted in him falling short of his funding goal. People already had a lot of distrust in Molyneux, distrust which was further asserted by the shit show that was Godus' release. The game was panned for being incomplete as it released into early access. The game even removed content from earlier versions. In fact, the iOS version, which was full to the brim with microtransactions by the way, was more complete than the PC version. The game was abandoned relatively fast as well, by both Molyneux and his team. In the 3 years it was supported, it barely received any updates. Hell, Molyneux wasn't even CEO of 22 Cans anymore by 2015, and in 2016 Godus was abandoned. So Molyneux and his team can work on another game called The Trail, which I actually played unbeknownst to all of this. And it was okay, nothing revolutionary or all that impressive. definitely not worth fucking over your monetary backers. In my personal opinion, I think the biggest fuck up in relation to Godus is what was done to Brian Henderson. Some context. 22Ken's first game was not Godus, rather an ARG called Curiosity was in the Cube, which had people dig into a cube in hopes of uncovering its secrets. Brian Henderson was the winner, and he was promised two things in relation to Godus. First was a God of Gods role, mainly reserved for the multiplayer portion of Godus, which was removed then re-added in 2016 as a separate game called Godus Wars. And beside almost having microtransactions which were scrapped due to backlash, it gave Henderson no real control. He was a deity in it, sure, but that is nowhere close to what Molyneux promised. Second promise was that Henderson would receive a portion of the game's earnings. How much was it? A whopping 1%! Which is actually not a bad deal, considering Henderson did nothing to develop the game and it still would have amounted to a good chunk of change. One problem though, Henderson received nothing. Due to Godus being a failure, Henderson's life-changing reward for solving the cube ended up being nothing. People were so tilted by how much Molyneux and co. slighted Henderson that people wanted to crowdfund $10,000 as compensation for him. On December 15th of 2023, Godus and Godus Wars were both pulled from Steam, effectively killing both games and any hope to whomever stuck by them. So what happened to Molyneux? Well, after the trailer turned out to be unsurprisingly not the success Molyneux and co. expected, he was kind of silent for years, which is impressive. Godus was such a shit show it caused Molyneux to finally zip his mouth shut. That is still 2021 when Molyneux announced a crypto-based game. Molyneux, are we serious right now, bro? Like, if I had a dime for each time a once great game developer started grifting crypto and NFTs after fumbling a crowdfunding campaign, I would have 2 dimes, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice. In 2023, Molyneux announced a new game, an actual game, not some crypto bullshit. The game's name is Masters of Albion, which is his return to the god game genre, his second return, and honestly, I hope Molyneux doesn't fumble this one too. Molyneux is 66, he is in perfect age to run for Congress but not to continue developing games. If Masters of Albion is ass, then most of his career would have been spent as a charlatan, a con man, and someone who makes big promises but never delivers on them, rather than a pioneer who created the whole genre. And that would be honestly kind of sad. Let's unwind from the god game to something a little simpler. What about a turn-based RPG? Crowdfunding has been always a tool for people to bring their role-playing dreams into fruition. Urin Chronicles, Sea of Stars, and even Divinity Original Sin 2 were all crowdfunded. So it's not surprising that in 2012, an incredibly small dev team consisting of a bunch of artists wanted to make their own RPG, which aimed mainly for a Tumblr audience. This game's name was the Arkh Project. The Arkh Project was released onto Indiegogo asking for $3,900, with tiers asking for $10, which would give you a poster and I assume a copy of the game, all the way to $1,000, which would give you not only posters but also limited edition prints, a concept art book, and a free signed copy of the game. Not sure how it's free considering you are paying $1,000, but I digress. You are most likely wondering, isn't $3,900 a very small amount of money for making a game, especially an RPG? And you would be correct. The reason that Riley, Kia, Aaron, the creators behind the campaign, yes, each name is a different person, was only asking for the small amount was because this was only for certain character concepts and not the whole game. Their plan is to fund the game in chunks. First the character concepts, then the levels, then the monster concepts, then the programming, etc, etc. You are probably wondering, isn't this a very inefficient, complicated, and messy way to go about funding this game than just funding it in one fell swoop? And you would be correct. But there is no but. It is absolutely an inefficient, messy, and complicated way to go about funding this game. But who cares? Let's talk about what makes this game appealing. The game's purpose and what made it appeal to a Tumblr audience was its desire to represent marginalized groups in a way that is not tokenized. The game hoped to represent African Americans, Asian Americans, Latinos, disabled people, and members of the LGBTQ community. People liked the idea. They even got an article praising them from Kotaku. All that praise resulted in the game getting $6,525, which is quite a bit more than what they asked for. Looking at their Tumblr page for the game, there are some frequently asked questions like, will there be any characters with disabilities? Riley first says no, then says yes. Or will there be any chubby characters? Riley says no, then says yes. Yeah, they didn't exactly seem sure about anything related to this game. Oh, there's still one more question. Will there be non-conventionally attractive characters? That's a fair thing to ask. Let's see what Riley responds with. Excusez-moi? What the fuck? Am I on Tumblr or the 4chan B-board? Well, moving on from whatever the fuck that was, let's look at some of the images used to advertise the game. These are just headshots of characters, most of them recycled. No gameplay, no systems, no mechanics, nothing really, which is odd as the game was developed in cooperation with Rose Gold Games. Let's check out some of their stuff. Yep, this looks like $100,000. I don't mean to demean them or anything, but I find it odd how they couldn't have had any type of prototype footage or early development images for the page, which can be explained by looking at the terms of conditions of Indiegogo compared to Kickstarter. If you look at how Kickstarter operates, you would see in their terms and conditions the need for a prototype or proof of concept for you to be able to make your page, while Indiegogo does not require anything like that. There is something that I need to address in relation to the Arkh Project, and that is its main creator, Riley. Riley is, and there's no elegant way to say it, a turbo bigot. I'm talking forged in the flames of hatred and quenched in the waters of discrimination. It is absurd how there's not a form of bigotry or hate that Riley hasn't dipped their toes in at least once. Don't believe me? Well, I will list them out for you. Content warning. For everyone, for everything. I'm not exaggerating when I say Riley was a turbo bigot. Racism towards black people. Check. But wait, isn't Riley black? Well, yes, but that never stopped nobody. Racism towards Chinese people. Check. Discrimination towards Native Americans. Check. Transphobia. Check. Misandry and racism. Call Riley a mixologist, the way they mix and match bigotry. Racism against the Japanese, check, which is especially odd as Rose Gold Games was composed of a duo, one of them being a Japanese woman. Misogyny, check. There's also ableism, Islamophobia, Southeast Asian discrimination, and much more. There is also some weird shit about minors, but unfortunately, most of the posts that are linked are deleted. But the worst thing Riley has done was doxing a 17-year-old for the crime of criticizing them. 50 shades of batshit insanity is all I can say. What does it entail for the Arkh Project? Unsurprisingly, the game didn't come out. Even the Kotaku article was updated to point out the things that were discovered about Riley's past. Riley did update for a little bit, but things slowed down and eventually completely stopped. The last piece of communication about the game was Riley telling critics to kill themselves. We got LTG Jr. over here. But in all honesty, the Arkh Project was never going to come out. The game's whole crutch and appeal is to represent marginalized groups and appeal to a Tumblr type of audience. The main issue is the fact its development is headlined by the real-life manifestation of Uncle Ruckus. There's no separating art from the artist, especially when the artist is a turbo bigot grifter. On top of it all, the game would have needed at least 8 more rounds of funding, amounting close to $100,000, which yeah, it was never going to reach. This game was doomed from the start. After the whole thing fell through, Riley's online presence slowed down. But Riley is many things if not persistent. Cause in 2016, Riley decided instead of grifting marginalized groups and the LGBTQ community to grifting the Undertale community. Which thinking about it is just grifting the marginalized and the LGBTQ again. This time for the Resync project, which was another crowdfunding campaign for an Undertale ripoff. This time Riley was asking for $10,000 to crowdfund a demo. 2 things. Are you out of your fucking mind? A demo for $10,000? The free thing released by developers so people can try out their games. And you want $10,000 for it? And clearly, Riley learned fucking nothing because they're basically doing what they did with Arkh Project again. What's particularly odd is how the game was trying to get that funding. They didn't use Kickstarter and not Indiegogo, but a site called You Caring, which was used to fund people's medical expenses. I really can't tell if Riley's the dumbest scammer or just the dumbest project manager out there. Once again, unsurprisingly, the Resync project did not come out, and You Caring got absorbed into GoFundMe. And something else is a Medium article that Riley wrote. For those who are not aware, Medium is a site where people can write and self-publish articles. Riley wrote one about their bizarre adventures with crowdfunding. They talk about how people spread misinformation about the project, how they were also seemingly harassed by Gamergate people. Mind you, they never addressed their own long history of harassment and their doxing of a minor. Small editor's note, I'm not sure if Riley was referencing Gamergate in this section, or just some people who came together to harass them for the Arkh Project. So don't take what I said previously as fact. They also talk about how all of this caused them to learn programming. Happy ending, I guess. Shout out to Izzy's video on the subject and this Hoppy Drama post. I basically summarized the info in both of them while trying to add my own spice, one way or another. If you want all the details, you can check them both out, linked in the description. That's basically all the stories I had. Don't take this video as me fear-mongering crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, like any service, got its pros and cons. And for every crushing failure, there's many successes which shape the industry in one way or another. For every mighty number 9, there's a Shovel Knight. For every Godus, there's a Universe Sim. For every Arkh Project, there is a Sea of Stars? I don't think this one fits. For every kick started in the butt, there is... I don't know, man. I don't play dating sims. That all aside, feel free to like, subscribe, hype the video, and see you guys next video. No idea when the next video is, cause this one took way too long.